666.
As President Biden looks to close GITMO, Saudi Arabia emerges as an option, according to a report in the New York Times. 36 prisoners remain at Guantánamo Bay today, and Saudi Arabia's reintegration center for recovering Islamic extremists may be an option for President Biden, who is looking to close the detention center in Cuba. Saudi Arabia's program, with its campus in Riyadh and another in Jeddah, grew from a counterterrorism campaign that began in 2004 to re-educate citizens who had made their way home from jihadist training camps in Afghanistan and others influenced by them.
Yeah, that is a big one. Did you pick this one?
I picked this one because I wanted to make you talk about it, and then I'm going to add nothing.
This is a big one, and it's this is Guantanamo. Like a lot of the fevered reaction after 9/11, in hindsight, it perhaps creates, I think it creates more problems than it resolves. I mean, in certain policies that led to things like Abu Ghraib or Guantanamo, we'd like to have back, I think, if we could go back and do it again. The difficulty is once something like Guantanamo is established, it's kind of hard to undo, and we've had successive presidents struggling with how to do this. Over the years, Guantanamo's had 780 men and boys. The peak being 660 there in 2003. Most of those, it's interesting. Of 732 men who have been freed from Guantanamo since the prison opened in January 2002, we just passed January, the 20-year anniversary. That is not say it with great pride or joy. The law really had no influence on the release. They were just, we've got to get these people back out. And, who do we send them to? We don't want to necessarily send them back to their home country. Who will take them? Over the years, Saudi Arabia, I think, has taken 137 from Guantanamo. And I think one of the reasons there's a discussion here. So, for example, several years ago, 20 were sent to the UAE with the understanding the UAE would house them and monitor them and that sort of thing. Essentially, what happened was the UAE turned around and almost immediately repatriated them to their home countries, where they could go back to whatever they were doing, that wasn't the agreement. Saudi Arabia is attractive as a potential option because they actually have a program. The program that they have, it's basically it's named the Mohammed bin Nayef Counseling Care Center, and they have care centers in Riyadh and Jeddah, and it's a plan that is intended to sort of reintegrate these folks, re-educate, reconnect them with their family, community ties, and essentially, undo the brainwash that happens is how they term it. And people criticize it, but this had a success. And again, going back to the beginning, when the U.S. looks around at options, Saudi Arabia is really the only place that has an ongoing system, administration, and setup to deal with trying to re-educate and reacclimate these, de-radicalize these individuals. So I don't know if it's actually going to happen. I think maybe some of it's wishful thinking because, we have 5 left. Yeah, there's 37 left, but 5, what we consider, forever prisoners, and they're not going to get out. But it's just been a black mark for us. It's been a rallying call for extremists all over the world, simply because for so many of these who were detained, there was no due process. They didn't have a trial. So it's Biden, like Trump, like Obama, is trying to get out from under.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to the story, but I just wanted to make the observation that if you look at Saudi Arabia's program, it's pretty much the opposite of what America did with Guantánamo Bay. And, this is a very complex issue. Obviously, each detainee has its own story, his or her own story. But if you look at the Saudi approach here, it's not to take these guys who were radicalized and, as you said, brainwashed, or, who could genuinely be very bad people, it lumps them all together and says, if we have a chance at putting you back into society and de-radicalizing you, we're going to do that. And we think the best way to do that is to not stick you in a cell by yourself in isolation, and just to sit there and remain angry at why you're there, because there's just no improvement there. You're not going to learn anything. And so I sort of think it's just two very, very different approaches here. And the Saudi approach is, hey, we understand you've been very radicalized and you've done some very bad things. We're not here to excuse these things, but there is a society for you to rejoin if you want to rejoin. And that doesn't mean it's like, oh yeah, I'm okay, and we just go back into society. It's obviously way more complicated than that, but it's just a different way of doing it. And 20 years later, like you said, Richard, this is probably the better of the two approaches, I think. I mean,
I would agree. It's an attempt. It's as described, these centers, the program blends classes on nonviolent interpretations of Sharia law with physical fitness, recreation and counseling aimed at returning those who graduate to their families. As one staff member called it, undoing the quote, the brainwash that happens when a young man is drawn to religious extremism. Of the 137 men sent to Saudi Arabia from Guantanamo, 116 have rejoined society and have stayed out of trouble. 12 were recaptured, 8 were killed, and 1 is wanted, according to a program fact sheet. So it's not 100%, but it's significantly more constructive than what's going on in Guantanamo, as you said, and I agree.
Yeah, and as you alluded to earlier, this is a very complex political issue as well. I mean, it's a very lazy but easy way to look at this and say, oh, it's terrorist rehab, just like drugs and alcohol, and you just send terrorists or extremists to it, and it's basically a resort, for them to. So if you're looking for punishment, it doesn't seem like the right sort of reaction, and so it's easy to criticize this, and was a lot easier to criticize this back in 2006, 2007, when it was on 60 Minutes, and it received a lot of criticism. But yeah, I mean, this is, and I wonder, Richard, and we don't know, but I wonder if this was discussed during the meeting between President Biden and King Salman, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Interesting. I'd hope it was not. I'd hope they were on to bigger things. Not that this isn't big. You mentioned the 60 Minutes is interesting because there was a jihad rehab documentary film that was submitted to Sundance that was quite controversial earlier in the year. And actually, a couple of Sundance directors resigned as a result of it, just that they felt like it misrepresented and it also endangered some of the men who were participating in the program, either because they're old compatriots or whatever. But yeah, it continues to be controversial. But again, it's there's a reason why, we're hoping Saudi Arabia might bail out, because they actually have an ongoing program that addresses the problem. Just keeping folks locked up in Guantanamo forever doesn't address the problem.